somewhere in the coastal desert of southern Peru, etched into the earth with a precision that still baffles engineers today, lies one of the most enduring mysteries the ancient world has left behind. The ground here is flat, dry, and almost completely undisturbed. A vast, reddish-brown plateau stretching across hundreds of square kilometers. And carved into its surface, with lines so perfectly straight they appear to have been drawn by a machine, are figures so enormous they can only be fully seen from the sky. A hummingbird with a wingspan of nearly 100 meters. A spider so geometrically precise that researchers have linked its design to a rare Amazonian species found nowhere near this desert. A monkey with a spiraling tail. A condor. A whale. And then the lines themselves. Long, ruler-straight corridors cutting across the landscape for kilometers, some wide enough to land a small aircraft, others narrow as footpaths, all of them maintaining their direction with an accuracy that defies the tools available to the people who created them. These are the Nazca Lines, and the deeper you look, the more questions you find waiting for you. The lines were created by the Nazca people, a civilization that flourished in this region roughly between 100 BCE and 800 CE. They made the figures by removing the reddish iron oxide-coated pebbles from the surface, revealing the pale yellowish-gray ground beneath. The contrast between the two layers creates the visible markings. In terms of the physical process, archaeologists are largely in agreement. What remains profoundly contested is the why. The witnesses to this mystery are not ghost hunters or fringe theorists. They include archaeologists, astronomers, anthropologists, pilots, and engineers, credentialed professionals who have spent careers studying this site and still cannot agree on a single unified explanation. The first modern scholar to study the lines in depth was a German mathematician and archaeologist named Maria Riesch, who dedicated over 4 decades of her life to mapping and protecting the figures. She arrived in the 1940s and never really left. She slept on the plateau, chased away vandals, and lobbied governments to preserve the site. Whatever the lines meant, she believed they were worth protecting at any cost. Riesch's own theory was astronomical. She believed the lines functioned as a kind of giant calendar, with specific figures and directions corresponding to the rising and setting points of celestial bodies across different seasons. The lines, in her interpretation, were tools for tracking the sun, the moon, and the stars. A way for an agricultural civilization in a harsh desert environment to predict the rains, plan the planting, and understand the passage of time. It was a compelling theory, and it carried weight for decades. But when other researchers began running astronomical analyses with computer modeling, the results were frustrating. Some lines did align with celestial events. Others pointed in directions with no obvious astronomical significance whatsoever. The percentage of meaningful alignments was, according to some analyses, barely better than what you would expect from random chance. Riesch had spent a lifetime on the plateau, and her dedication was beyond question. But the astronomical theory began to crack under scrutiny, so investigators looked elsewhere, and what they found opened the mystery even wider. Anthropologist Johann Reinhard proposed a different framework entirely. He argued that the lines were connected to water and fertility rituals. The Nazca Desert is one of the driest places on Earth, and water was not merely important to the people who lived here, it was everything. Reinhard pointed out that many of the lines converge on or near ancient underground water sources called puquios, hand-built spiral aqueducts that still function in some areas today. The animal figures, he suggested, were not maps or calendars, but offerings. Sacred imagery meant to invoke the forces that controlled rainfall and water flow. The lines were pathways walked by priests and worshippers during ritual processions, connecting sacred spaces and calling on the gods for the one thing this landscape could never guarantee: water. This theory gained significant traction. It fit the cultural context, it explained the convergence patterns, and it aligned with what we know about Andean spiritual traditions, where the relationship between landscape, movement, and the divine was deeply intertwined. But then came the theory that changed the public conversation entirely. And it came not from an archaeologist, but from a Swiss author named Erich von Däniken, whose 1968 book proposed something that no academic had dared to suggest in print. He looked at the long, flat, straight corridors stretching across the plateau and saw something familiar. He saw runways. He argued that the Nazca Lines were not messages to gods above, but landing strips for ancient aircraft. Specifically, for visitors from another world. The figures, in his view, were drawn to be seen from above, and the only logical conclusion was that someone above was watching. The academic community largely rejected this interpretation, and the reasons were substantial. The ground surface of the plateau is not compacted enough to support any aircraft of meaningful weight. The lines are not actually flat. They follow the natural undulations of the terrain, which would make them useless as runways in any practical sense. And the figures themselves, the hummingbird, the spider, the hands, these are not the markings you would use to guide a craft to a landing zone. They are art. They are symbols. They are something meant to be understood, not navigated. And yet the theory refused to die. Because von Däniken had identified something real, even if his explanation was controversial. The figures can only be fully appreciated from altitude. A person standing on the plateau sees almost nothing, just low, shallow lines in the dirt. You need height to see the spider. You need height to see the condor's wings spread across the earth. So the question that lingers, the one that even the most skeptical researchers cannot entirely dismiss, is this: who were the Nazca drawing for? Some researchers have proposed that the Nazca people used simple hot air balloons constructed from local materials, reeds and cloth, to gain altitude and observe their work. Experimental archaeologists have actually built such balloons using only materials available in the region and demonstrated that flight was physically possible. Whether the Nazca actually did this remains unproven, but the experiment showed it was not impossible. Others argue that the figures were not meant to be seen from above at all, that the act of creating them, of walking the lines and tracing the forms, was itself the ritual. The gods did not need to look down. The people needed to move through the sacred shapes, to inhabit them, to become part of the offering. This idea connects to similar traditions found across the ancient world. The geoglyphs of the Atacama Desert in northern Chile, some of which predate the Nazca figures, show similar large-scale designs on hillsides and plains. The hill figures of southern England, enormous chalk carvings of horses and human forms cut into hillsides, suggest that the impulse to create images at a scale beyond ordinary human vision was not unique to Peru. In the American Southwest, indigenous peoples created intaglios, large figures scraped into desert pavement that bear striking resemblance to the Nazca tradition. Whatever was driving this behavior, it was not isolated. It was something that appeared in multiple cultures, across multiple continents, across thousands of years. Which raises a question that no single theory has yet answered satisfactorily. Why did so many ancient cultures, with no known contact between them, independently develop the practice of creating massive images on the earth that could only be fully perceived from above? Was this a shared spiritual impulse? A universal human desire to communicate with the heavens? Was it something encoded in the way human beings relate to the sacred? Or is there a connection we have not yet found? The Nazca Lines were designated a UNESCO World Heritage Site in 1994, which brought both protection and new scrutiny. In recent years, researchers using aerial drones and advanced imaging technology have discovered hundreds of previously unknown figures in the surrounding area, smaller, older, and made using a different technique. These newly discovered geoglyphs appear to have been created by a culture that preceded the Nazca, suggesting that the tradition of marking the earth at massive scale had roots even deeper than previously understood. The Nazca did not invent this practice. They inherited it, and then expanded it to a scale that has never been matched anywhere else on Earth. Among the newly discovered figures are depictions of decapitated humans, warriors, and ritual scenes that suggest a darker dimension to the tradition. The Nazca civilization eventually collapsed, likely due to a combination of prolonged drought and ecological degradation. The very forces their rituals may have been designed to appease. When the civilization fell, the lines were abandoned. The desert preserved them. And centuries later, a pilot flying over the plateau looked down and saw something in the earth that should not have been there. That pilot's report in the 1920s was the first modern documentation of the lines. And in a strange way, it echoes the central question that has never been resolved. The lines were noticed from above. They were recognized as something intentional, something designed, something meant. But meant for what? Meant for whom? Maria Reich, who spent more years on that plateau than almost any other researcher, was asked near the end of her life whether she had found the answer. She said she believed the lines were a gift, an expression of something the Nazca people understood about the relationship between earth and sky, between human beings and the forces that governed their world. She said she did not think the answer could be reduced to a single explanation. She said the mystery was part of the message. Perhaps that is the most honest conclusion available to us. The Nazca Lines are not a puzzle waiting for a single correct solution. They are a window into a way of thinking about the world that we have largely lost, a way in which landscape was sacred, movement was prayer, and the act of marking the earth was a form of reaching toward something larger than the human. The lines are still there. The desert is still dry. And the figures still wait, patient as stone, for someone to finally understand what they were trying to say. What do you think the Nazca people were communicating when they carved those enormous figures into the earth? Were they calling out to the heavens, honoring the forces of nature, or leaving behind something we still do not have the language to understand? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. This is exactly the kind of question where every perspective adds something new. If this story made you think, consider sharing it with someone else who loves a good mystery. And if you want to keep exploring the unexplained, there is another story waiting for you right now. The next mystery is closer than you think. But before you click away, consider this final detail. One that researchers rarely discuss in the same breath as the grand theories about astronomy and ritual and extraterrestrial visitors. Among all the figures etched into the Nazca Plateau, there is one that has quietly unsettled investigators for decades. It is a figure sometimes called the astronaut or the owl man, carved into a hillside rather than the flat plateau floor. Unlike the sweeping animal forms visible only from altitude, this figure is positioned on a slope, as if designed to be seen from the side, from a distance, by someone approaching at eye level. It raises one hand toward the sky. Some researchers see a robed figure with a helmet-like head. Others see a stylized human form in a ceremonial pose, entirely consistent with Andean artistic traditions. But what makes this figure genuinely strange is its location. It sits apart from the main concentration of lines, isolated on a hillside facing outward, not toward the earth, not toward the other figures, toward the horizon. No one has produced a fully satisfying explanation for why this particular figure was placed here, in this orientation, in this posture. It does not fit neatly into the water ritual theory. It does not align with any identified astronomical event, and it does not resemble the other figures in either scale or placement. It simply stands there, arm raised, looking outward, waiting, perhaps, for something to arrive, or perhaps marking the moment something already did. The Nazca Lines have survived earthquakes, floods, and the slow erosion of centuries. They have outlasted the civilization that created them by more than 1,000 years. And in that endurance, there is something worth sitting with. The possibility that the people who made these marks understood something about permanence, about legacy, about the desire to be remembered by forces beyond ordinary human reach. We may never know with certainty what the Nazca were saying, but we know they were saying something, and they built it to last. If this story left you with more questions than answers, that is exactly the point. Drop your theories in the comments, whether you believe in ancient ritual, astronomical science, or something far stranger. Every perspective matters here. If you found this journey worth taking, share it with someone who loves a mystery as much as you do. And subscribe so you never miss the next unexplained story waiting just around the corner.